The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 45.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everybody, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. I also go by Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including all the deeper themes and meanings. And so today we are discussing Star Wars Rebels by looking at Season 2, Episode 1 and 2, The Siege of Lothal. We're kind of following Ahsoka, Rex, and Maul as they appear in Star Wars Rebels. And joining me today on the panel are, first up, we have Thomas and Herho. Hey, Thomas.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Second
it's
up,
been an interesting one to put together.
Yeah. So second up this evening, we have a special guest joining us this evening. The rest of the podcast crew are unable to join us. And so we have Josh Beeghley, who's joining us this evening. He is a huge Star Wars fan from what I hear, but it's his first time on the show. So I will let him give a brief introduction to himself. So Josh, welcome on to the show.
Hello, I'm Josh. I'm currently a senior in high school. I just graduated like a week ago, so that was fun online.
Yeah, totally.
But I kind of been enjoying Star Wars since kindergarten, really, and it sort of has grown as Disney Plus came out. I started watching a lot more of the Clone Wars and Rebels and things like that. It kind of just became something I've enjoyed a lot, especially during this quarantine time.
Yeah.
Something to keep occupied.
So what is your favorite movie?
I love Return of the Jedi.
Nice.
That's my favorite one.
Okay, and then I have to ask, favorite hero and favorite villain.
Oh boy. Canon or expanded
Are you just popping these on him?
I totally am.
No, I like Qui-Gon because he was the one main character who actually like saw everything. And if you look into things, other things like outside of the main universe, they also say how he was very powerful and was able to even had Palpatine being feared of him because of how he saw the future, his rebellious side. Oh, for the villain, I would have to say is Maul, because the Clone Wars, it gave him a great arc. It's just something you have to really enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just going to mention, have you seen the docuseries Disney Gallery on The Mandalorian?
I have, and I've been enjoying it, especially the most recent one, with how they showed how they created it all.
Yeah. The most recent episode just dropped last week, and they talked about all the technology behind the sets, and which really, really cool. But Filoni also talks about Qui-Gon, so that was kind of super, super cool that there's definitely connections there. So once again, thanks for joining us on the show, and we're gonna have an awesome discussion here about Star Wars Rebels. But before we jump into that, there are just a number of kind of random tidbits and news things. Today we are recording on May 25th, and so in particular, today is the 43rd anniversary of the theatrical releases of Star Wars: A New Hope, the 37th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and it's the second anniversary of Solo. And so I couldn't help but notice that the hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen is trending. So would you guys be interested in a Solo sequel?
Absolutely. No. That's probably one of the extra canons that I like the best, honestly.
There was one online commentator that was suggesting that maybe with Disney Plus, they wouldn't do a movie sequel, but they would maybe do a Disney Plus series sequel, which would be really cool. One other super, super important anniversary is that today is the 7th anniversary of the podcast, Secrets of Star Wars.
Ooh,
so
7.
Yeah, I pulled up the feed even, and Father Roderick and Dom were talking about their excitement for where Disney would take Star Wars 7 years ago. So lots of good stuff are coming. The other couple random news tidbits to throw your way is that in the past couple weeks, and these are rumors. They're not official on Star Wars yet, but they're probably fairly credible. But Katie Sackhoff appears to have been cast as a live action Bo-Katan in The Mandalorian season 2. So. Thoughts?
That sounds
excitement,
awesome. And I'm super excited about that.
all the characters that they're bringing from the Clone Wars into the Mandalorian. It's just something to really be excited about.
Yeah, and I think Katie Sackhoff is she has the I mean, she's got the body type for it. I mean, she's super athletic, and she can pull off a live action Mandalorian. I think very, very well.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah, excited for that. The other news about The Mandalorian is Timothy Olyphant is joining the cast, and supposedly he's going to be wearing Boba Fett's armor. But the rumor is that he's not going to be playing Boba Fett. He's going to be playing a character, Cobb Vanth, and who is a self-appointed sheriff from Freetown settlement on Tatooine, and this is described in the Aftermath trilogy books by Chuck Wendig. So I didn't quite get into those books as much, so I don't know a whole lot about him, but apparently he inherited this Mandalorian armor that was salvaged by the Jawas on Tatooine. It's never explicitly linked to Boba Fett himself, but it could be.
Iconic enough, right?
Yeah.
I've been interested in Simon Pegg's take. I don't know if you guys have been reading in the news. Like he's trying to angle for coming in and playing Dengar, the bounty hunter from the original series, and he's like, I do have a history doing this because he voiced it in one of the and I think some of the Clone Wars episodes. So
isn't he
interesting to see?
Isn't he in The Force Awakens too?
He is. Yes, he's the trader guy that is.
He gives Rey the portions.
Gives Rey right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, lots of potential awesome things coming up in The Mandalorian, debuting this fall. But with that, let's jump into Rebels, and again, we're talking about the Siege of Lothal, which is the first 2 episodes of season 2. They were kind of linked together as one sort of movie experience. And so, as I typically do, I throw the ball out to you guys first to get your kind of initial impressions. What was your first reaction to these episodes?
I mean, whenever the very first time I saw it, I thought it was really interesting to see sort of like the mindset behind Darth Vader and how he was planning on bringing the rebels out, and just shows how intelligent he is and how he's able to think 2 or 3 steps ahead, which is clearly shown with whenever the rebels try and save the one, I forget her name, but they try to save her. It really shows his intelligence and how he can see what the rebels want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought it was interesting to see the Force use played out because there's obviously such a disparity of power between him and Kanan and Ezra, but you see him toying with them.
Yeah,
and you see the same thing with Luke in in Empire Strikes Back, where he's kind of toying with Luke to start off with, and then he realizes that he needs to actually like pick up the pace and starts getting a little harsher on him. And then by Return of the Jedi, you see he has to actually have a fight with Luke, and he can't hold back quite as much as he was hoping to be able to. But you definitely see the cat toying with the mouse in this one, which was really nice kind of visual image of him.
Yeah. Well, and I even wrote it down that I thought Darth Vader, this is like in his prime. So this is all taking place before Rogue One, where he is absolutely terrifying. And he's initially watching the episode, it's like, gosh, he could have just taken out Kanan and Ezra. No sweat. And he doesn't. But after kind of watching the whole thing, you realize he wasn't actually intending to kill them. He wanted them to escape. And so he was just kind of toying with them. So I also kind of put out there that this these two episodes were actually released during, they were privately screened at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim back in 2015. So I didn't actually get to watch it then, but that was when all the hype for The Force Awakens was coming, and then it was released over the summer. And so this was kind of really the first introduction to Darth Vader, to the Star Wars Rebels storyline. Really the first time that Ahsoka was brought in. She was brought in the finale of season 1. And it was a lot more heart-wrenching for me to watch these episodes after just completing the Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
So, yeah, my first run through Rebels, I had very little Clone Wars experience. And so I knew who Ahsoka was, but I didn't have the emotional connection. And then this time, when her and Vader have that Force connection and she passes out, it's just like, oh, yeah, shot through the heart. And it's just, yeah, it's again interesting to see how they bring in Darth Vader and how intelligent he is, but also how brutal he is. So we'll kind of get into that. So, and I also put in there, I love the one-liners. There are so many good just one-liners in these episodes, and I think just in general, this show does a really good job with those. So the brief summary of the entire arc of these two episodes is that the Inquisitor is dead, who was the villain from season 1. And the Ghost crew has connected with the other rebel cells, and a new ally named Ahsoka Tano has emerged. Despite these successes and developments, the fight against the Empire takes a deadly turn as the evil Sith Lord Darth Vader comes to Lothal. So the whole episode opens with a space battle between the group of rebels that we know, the Ghost crew, but also Phoenix Squadron, fighting against this group of Imperials, and they are trying to steal this cargo that initially they thought it was shield generators, and so they are fighting with them. And Kanan makes all sorts of random comments through these, how he wishes that they were on their own, and makes another comment there as well about it. And so they manage to knock the cargo off with the help of Phoenix Squadron, and they are able to steal the cargo and, jump to hyperspace and get away from all of these the Imperial reinforcements that come into play.
This scene was really interesting coming from Clone Wars. So, like back-to-back Clone Wars to this, you feel the big difference between the two series, because Clone Wars was a lot more about ground battles and watching the clones do what they were doing on planets against the droids. Whereas here you're back to that kind of Star Wars feel of the dogfights in space and, quick runs to try and grab something from the Empire and then get out before they notice you are able to do anything about it. And I like that. I like the fact that feeling is so different between the two shows, but it's still Star Wars.
It feels very much closer to, it's Star Wars Rebels, in the Rebel Alliance, the hit and runs, the guerrilla tactics, and everything's just less organized and less, kind of militaristic. So then we have the jump to the scene with Agent Kallus and Minister Tua on Lothal, and Kallus is telling Tua, basically that she's failed in finding these rebels, and Kallus tells her that Governor Tarkin wants Lothal to be punished, and Tua is just kind of completely at a loss of what else to do. She's tried everything that she knows what to do. And we see, a really interesting side of her, that she, I think, she's not really a villain per se. I mean, she kind of believes in the idealism that she thinks that the Empire is all about, in providing order and everything. She doesn't want to do the brutal tactics that Darth Vader comes in and suggests that she lacks imagination, and he wants to squeeze Lothal until someone reveals the rebels' whereabouts. But she is caught in this place of she thought she knew what the Empire was all about, and she agreed with what the Empire was all about in her ideological kind of view. And once Darth Vader comes in and suggests that, more brutal tactics are needed and that she needs to go to Governor Tarkin to explain her failures, we can see that she is very much torn with that, and of course succumbs to trying to defect from the Empire.
It's interesting because you always get this argument about people in war that they were just doing their job.
Yep.
And you see that here. You see someone who is in a position where they are just doing their job, but then they get pushed to that next level and they're not comfortable going there. Mm-hmm. And we forget that there are in any of these situations, like even when you're talking about the worst of humanity, there were people who were literally just doing their job and they didn't have a broader view of what was going on. And so they never really thought about, I guess we're rounding these people up and putting them on a train. And they didn't think about where that might have led. But at the same time, there were people that did take that next step and knew mm-hmm. what the end of that road was and still were willing to carry on with it. So it's nice to see one of those characters that gets caught in the crosshairs on that moral conundrum and decides to take a different route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it's definitely one thing to kind of just ignore, the future consequences mm-hmm. of your actions, which, mm-hmm. Many people fall into that realm that I'm just going to do the job right in front of me and I'm not going to look at how it affects anything beyond my own little world. And she at least has that kind of sense that there is something bigger here and this isn't quite right. And yeah, and I put in my notes here that we see sort of the two sorts of moralities at play here. Darth Vader is very much embodying the ends justify the means. And so he is the one pulling the strings on everything. He knows that Minister Tua is going to defect and he's counting on it. And he is using her to get to the rebels. And that, of course, is immoral. The ends can never justify the means. If you were doing something immoral to get to a good result, it is wrong. You can't do evil in order to do good. And Darth Vader, and again, that kind of goes back to his own intelligence, but also just the fact that he's let that evil corrupt his heart. Mm-hmm. And he is willing to use her and kill her, as we see, in order to get to the rebels. And she kind of is on the other end of that, where she finally recognizes that this isn't quite right. And she chooses to reach out to the rebels. Josh, what did you think of Minister Tua?
I mean, at first, I thought that she seemed like trying to be reasonable with people, that she was at least trying to appeal to the humanity of them, that they are people and that they do deserve certain, like a better treatment of themselves. Mm-hmm. But then, obviously, that didn't really work out for her. And then she's part of like a huge empire. And we know that Palpatine's a very good manipulator, because he was able to manipulate them to execute Order 66 and kill everyone. Yeah. So, I mean, she was definitely manipulated, and I think that's something to really drive home, is that not everybody knew the situation that was actually happening.
Yeah, and it just makes you kind of feel even more for her. She was just kind of a pawn in the whole situation, and then she's discarded. So we go back to the Rebel fleet, and we see Commander Sato and the entire Ghost crew talking about their recent skirmish, and they realize that the cargo that they stole didn't actually have the shield generators. And as they're talking, Chopper, whom I love, I think Chopper's a really fun droid. I don't know if I would want to be his owner, but he's fun. So he barges in and informs them that he's receiving this transmission, and they keep playing out the plot of Kanan just kind of being grumpy about the whole situation. And he just tells Chopper to display the message, and Hera gives him, I put the look. Yeah. And she kind of smooths it over and has Chopper cloak it with a one-way transmission. And that's when old Joe appears and Minister Tua comes on and tells the rebels that she wants help getting off Lothal and she's willing to defect. and she is willing to trade the names of rebel sympathizers to them in exchange for this. And one of the things that she mentions, did you notice that she mentions that she knows the true reason that the Empire is on Lothal, ordered by the Emperor himself, and that is never explained in the episode.
No, but it's explained later in the series, though, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. It's very much there. They're after the Jedi Temple that's on Lothal.
Right.
But I just thought that was interesting because I'm sure the first time that I saw it, when it was released in 2015, I just completely glossed over that line. And then when they never addressed it, I just completely forgot about it.
Just left it. Yeah.
Right. Right. So I thought that was a cool little foreshadowing piece there. Everybody agrees that they need to help Minister Tua. And
except Kanan.
Except Kanan. He just kind of wants to go off on his own. Well, not really, but
but I thought the exchange there was really interesting too, because you have Ahsoka standing in the background, kind of watching what was going on. And that's since we're following her here, I thought I was really focusing on watching her throughout this whole series. Yep. And that's something you don't really do the first time through, because you're like you realize she's a background character. Like they keep putting her literally in the background just to keep her out of the way, which was smart for what they were doing at the time to keep the main characters forward. But watching her watch the interaction between Kanan and Ezra, and then when Ezra steps forward and finally says, "No, we need to do this," and she's got this like look of pride on her face, like, "Yeah, I'm glad you stood up and said that," because I didn't want to be the one to say that, but I'm glad you stood up and said that. And then she agrees with him, like she's the first one to agree with him, and then they all kind of follow suit from there. That was a really neat moment to like watch the seat that she's taking after having been so involved in the Clone Wars that now she's kind of like, okay, this is a new group and they're finding their legs. Let them find their legs.
And I wonder if she sees herself in Ezra.
Right.
Because I mean, watching the Clone Wars, she was impulsive and quick to jump to action. And here she is, taking that somewhat of a parental sort of role. And letting Ezra come to that realization himself, but then supporting him. One of the things that I just noticed about this whole thing, and it's a theme throughout the entirety of Star Wars Rebels, is that family is very key in all of this. And we see that over and over again. Hera and Kanan are kind of the mom and dad of the group, and Ezra and Zeb are the bickering brothers, and Sabine's like the cool older sister.
Yep.
Chopper's the dog, I guess.
Chopper runs the family.
Which is true of a lot of dogs in their own respective families. But I love how they kind of poll everybody and everybody gets a voice, and then ultimately, even if they all don't agree, they all support one another in whatever choice that they've done. So they do decide to go and try to rescue Minister Tua. But then we have the mom and dad talk in the hallway when Hera confronts Kanan about his whole demeanor and what's bothering him. And I really appreciated that because Kanan is bugged by the whole thing. He doesn't want to join the larger rebellion. He wants to just kind of work, just him and Hera and the Ghost crew and be solo. And they had a good thing going, and he was fine with that. Joining the larger rebel groups is a reminder of the Clone Wars when everything went completely haywire for him, and he doesn't want to go back there. But what I appreciated about this was that Kanan had this issue. And Hera just kind of stops him and just says, "All right, talk to me." And they talk it out. It's not just kind of, well, we're going to ignore your feelings, but, just kind of go on. But she gets him to talk it out.
Yeah. And she doesn't put her foot down. Like, that's the other thing that was really cool about it. There wasn't like, you need to stop this. It was, hey, we can't be doing that. Tell me what's wrong so that I can help work it out.
Right.
One thing with Kanan also, I think even throughout the whole season, is that he does have a lot of trust issues during this and putting his faith into other people other than the group that he's already got. Because, even whenever he was talking, he did sound like worried, and he was trying to appeal to the audience with some sympathy, which I thought was very important.
Yep. And they're all kind of just learning how to do this whole thing. And I kind of put in my notes too that they all want to do the right thing. They all want to help those in need. I mean, Ezra makes the point that why are we, I think Zeb asks, why should we help her? And Ezra says, well, because that's what we do. We help those who can't help themselves, plus the list is going to help too, of course. But the whole idea of virtue and doing what's right and loving and helping those in need is never something that can be self-contained. Like love by essence is a giving of itself, and it can never be depleted, and it constantly is giving and overflowing. And so even Kanan resisting joining the larger rebel groups is sort of, it's not going to work. If he wants to continue to do good, the natural progression is that it gets larger and larger and larger, because that's the nature of love. And he would have to turn inward and selfish in order to stop that progression. So all of that is kind of at play here, which is a really good thing to kind of portray. So the Ghost crew takes a different shuttle back to Lothal because they're afraid that the Empire is going to recognize the Ghost. When they get to Lothal, this was kind of one of the key things about Darth Vader is that Ezra feels cold. Mm-hmm. And that's constantly what they go back to whenever they encounter Darth Vader, which is unfortunately appropriate.
It was cool to get a word for that feeling, because you see Luke have that feeling in the original series when they're flying by and he recognizes that Vader's there, and he just mentions that there's a feeling. Or when and then it made me think, well, what is Vader feeling when he says to his subordinate in the first movie, I feel a presence I haven't felt since, and then just cuts off, and we know it's Obi-Wan that he's feeling, but like, what was he feeling? Was he feeling then the opposite, which would be warm? And so I like that really opened up a lot of really interesting doors for me in how the Force works and what Force sense is like. Mm-hmm. It was good to get words for it, really.
Right. But even just a description of like not quite pure evil is cold just seems so appropriate. They do land, and Kanan decides to go make some friends, as he calls it, to get the stormtrooper and steal the armor, and mockingly calls her General Hera. And I love the animation, because as Kanan is telling the group and Hera that he's going to go make some new friends, Hera gives him this look again that is just like, are you serious? And that is just like, I could see my mom doing that at my dad. Like, it was just that kind of a look, and it was just so appropriate. Kanan goes off and steals some stormtrooper armor, and they get into position because they know that Minister Tua is going to be coming to this particular docking bay to leave, and they plan to rescue her. What they don't recognize, or what they don't realize initially, is that Agent Kallus is with her, and there's a fight that breaks out as they try to cause a diversion and rescue Minister Tua. And this is the unfortunate point where Minister Tua is completely just discarded. They managed to tell her to get to the shuttle, and it's been rigged to explode, and it explodes, killing her. And immediately Agent Kallus blames the rebels, which was all part of the plan. It shows Darth Vader kind of watching from above, and they have to kind of backpedal and escape. And this was just one of the, again, like the heart-wrenching part of this whole episode, is where you're rooting for Tua, and you're rooting that she escapes with the rebels. And we're just kind of, we run into the brick wall with her, and then recognize that was all part of the plan to begin with. And it really turns even more against Darth Vader.
Which is interesting, because they've always been two characters for me. It's always been Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. And until this last wrap up in the Clone Wars, I knew that it was Anakin in the mask, but I was not seeing Anakin in the mask. And seeing this episode immediately after the Clone Wars, it's very much like, that's that guy we were cheering for just a little while ago, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's hard, because even Vader and Palpatine separate the two. At the end of the second episode, Vader tells him the apprentice of Skywalker lives, as if Skywalker is, some third party.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, so Anakin is obviously doing that intentionally to separate, forget his old life and embrace who he is now. And, it makes the whole thing just a little bit more tragic. Darth Vader has Callus inform the public that the rebels are assassins and they're in hiding, and any ship trying to leave Lothal will be destroyed. And the crew of the Ghost goes to one of their safe houses and is able to see this. And that's where they have to make the hard decision that they need to leave Lothal for good. Otherwise, the people are just going to continue to suffer. And stormtroopers manage to find them, of course, and they escape. And they do leave, but they realize they need a ship to escape, and they need to go to the Imperial complex where there will be less patrols, which does make sense.
It's actually makes perfect sense, really.
But that was also one of the great one-liners, because Hera asks Kanan, "Are you crazy?" And Kanan says, "Does anyone ever say yes to that question?" Everybody's just a little bit crazy on this team to begin with. But so Kanan and Ezra smuggle the crew of the Ghost inside the Imperial complex, which was a awesome scene. This is the point where Kanan is dressed in his stormtrooper armor and Ezra is dressed as the cadet, and they have the crew of the Ghost in one of those boxes, and they're trying to get into the Imperial complex, and Ezra tries to use the Jedi mind trick on the stormtrooper and he fails.
But I got this one. It's just it's like, oh, neat. Okay, he's gonna try it. Oh no, nope, that did not work. Are you trying to give me orders, cadet? It's a great moment.
But then even the dialogue between Kanan and Ezra afterwards, Ezra's like, "I wish that worked for me," and then Kanan is like, "I wish that worked on you." Again, just I love the family feel of it. There's that fatherly feel that Kanan has for Ezra.
Yeah, he cares for him, but he just also wants him to behave and not be a pain in his butt.
Well, and Josh, I'm sure that you can recognize that with your own dad, right?
Oh yeah. Times that I can be annoying.
Right. It's there's always love, but it's my dad would just shake his head oh my gosh, really? So
sometimes love means I'm going to smack you upside the head because, that was not a good decision. Seriously.
Right.
What were you thinking?
Yeah. But in this case, it was definitely a mutual plan and it works out. And they do get into the Imperial complex, and they find their way to a shuttle and find a bunch of military grade shield generators and try to take as many of them on board as they can. And again, Ezra and Kanan both feel the cold again at this point. And the episode ends with Darth Vader approaching, lightsaber lit, and stormtroopers following. And again, all I could think of is at this point, this is Rogue One Vader. This should be absolutely terrifying.
That door opens and then the lightsaber lights up, and it's that same scene, and you're like,
yeah,
oh boy, this is not going to end well.
But thankfully, it's part one of part two. It was the end of part one of two-parter, and there was no wait between the two of these when they were released. So episode 2 starts up right there with the lightsaber battle between Ezra, Kanan, and Darth Vader. And we mentioned this earlier, but Vader just easily throws Kanan and Ezra around. He, just toys with them. Ezra and Kanan needed a little. In fact, I think Kanan's battle in the finale of season 1, I had watched that before watching these with the Inquisitor. That Kanan was more on his game in that battle than he was with Vader.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also get a sense here that Kanan's reacting a little bit emotionally to seeing Vader too, because with the Inquisitors, and this is where you start to wonder what the levels of force power are. between all of these guys, because he tends to rank Inquisitors not even as Jedi, which means maybe they're Force sensitive, but not actually at that same level that he is. So he's worried about him because they're skilled, but not necessarily that they are competitive with him. Just that he's not on top of his game generally.
Yeah.
But then Vader is that totally different level of an actual Jedi, and it's possible that he even recognizes something about him. Maybe he doesn't know exactly who he is, but he feels that power and has felt that power before, having been around Anakin at some point during the Clone Wars.
But he also does recognize him as a Sith Lord.
Right.
So, yeah, he very much could have been reacting out of that fear, dread, caution.
Yeah.
So we get another awesome one-liner, this time from Zeb, when Sabine and him are talking, and Sabine's like, you know what I do in hopeless situations? And Zeb is like, yeah, blow stuff up. Like, that's what they do.
Yes.
Explosions are always a good thing in Star Wars. So Zeb and Sabine do use some thermal detonators, and they push over some nearby walkers onto Vader, which allows Kanan and Ezra to escape. But Vader just uses the Force and lifts them off himself. So, no harm done. But Ezra and Kanan and the Ghost crew do manage to then escape with that shuttle.
But I love Sabine shoots him twice, and he deflects both bolts right back into her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you realize how powerful Mandalorian battle armor is, first off.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like how powerful the Sith Lord is, where he's just like, yep, nope, flick them both back. No problem. Bing, bing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's an enemy. We just kind of saw that too, as just reminded of Maul in the finale arc of the Clone Wars. Like, he just deflect, or the ability of them to deflect the blaster bolts are just impressive. On the shuttle, they do talk about that encounter with Vader, and Kanan does recognize that he is a Sith, and not just another Inquisitor. And they realize that there's going to be a blockade around Lothal, and that they need to smuggle themselves off of Lothal. And they know a guy, which was cool. I think Lando was in season 1, correct? Somewhere along the way. I don't quite remember.
Yeah. I at the very least he was mentioned, but I think he was. It's been a while since I watched him, but I think he was. I think they already knew him, and I think they already had felt double crossed by him. That's why Kanan was resistant at first.
Right.
But it's Lando is not going to help you altruistically. So
all right. He's
something you can always keep in mind.
He's in it for what he can get out of it too. But it was great because it was Billy D. Williams who did the voice for Lando.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a really cool thing to bring into Rebels. We see Darth Vader commanding Callus to burn Tarkin Town, which was a refugee camp that the Rebels had provided aid to in the past, and that was completely uncalled for. There was no reason for it. He was planning to do it just to use the compassion of the Rebels against them. And again, just another blatant. Well, it in the episode, it served also as just a visual representation of the evil that Darth Vader was when Ezra and Kanan both encounter it, and the smoke and the destruction. But the Ghost crew does talk to Lando, and he's not on Lothal, but he has his droid on Lothal who will help them smuggle themselves off the planet. Did you recognize the voice of that droid when they encounter him?
I didn't. I'm glad you looked it up, because I didn't have time to look it up yet. But who was it?
It sounded familiar, but
it is Sam Witwer.
Ah,
so
okay.
Voice of Maul, for those of you who aren't making that connection. The call number 2 is W1LE, so it's Willie.
I liked the character that he gave it. Mm-hmm. It was really like a laid back droid, which is such a like almost a laid back protocol droid. Just seems like such a weird thing, but it was really nice. Like, just chill, like, hey, and it fits with Lando's personality very well too.
The other fun thing about that droid is if you look at some of the original concept art for C-3PO, that is the same. Yep. It's very much based on that design. So a really cool throwback there. Sam Witwer also does the voice of Emperor Palpatine in this episode.
Oh,
so cool. I think at some point I was reading online that Ian McDiarmid redid the lines, but as far as I could tell in the Disney Plus stream, it was still Sam Witwer, because I had the Ian McDiarmid and Disney Plus kind of open right next to each other, and they're different voices. So either way, Sam Witwer is an amazing voice actor. Just to throw that out there.
Very much so.
So this droid helps the Ghost crew kind of figure out what they're going to do. And that's when Ezra and Kanan see the destruction of Tarkin Town. And they go off and kind of lament the loss that happened, but recognize that if they tried to go rescue any of the prisoners, that wouldn't work, and that they need to leave Lothal to avoid more evil happening to the people.
And with that, I kind of drew the parallel to A New Hope whenever Luke ran back home after meeting Kenobi.
Yep.
And seeing Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen all burnt up.
Yep.
Realizing that they have nothing left there to really help with, and that they have to leave and continue their journey.
Yeah. Well, and both A New Hope at that point, Luke recognizes, there's nothing that he can come back to, but that he has to go out into this larger world, which he didn't want to do. But here too, there's that same idea. Kanan is telling Ezra that, every action that they have has a consequence. And this is what's happening. And they, this isn't, I think this is probably also where Kanan is recognizing that they can't just go back to being.
I was going to say he's telling himself as much as he's telling Ezra at that point. No, we really have to do this.
Yep. He's sort of even lamenting that things are getting worse, just like they were during the Clone Wars. But he mentions back then there were 10,000 Jedi Knights, and now it's just them against the Empire, and they have to continue to do what they're doing and support the rebels. They go back to trying to escape, and they use Lando's gear with Sabine's plan, which was a very crucial thing. It wasn't Lando's plan, which was another kind of comical interlude there. Everything about Lando is apparently suspicious.
You can't really blame that.
A little bit of foreshadowing there, right?
Yeah. Lando ultimately, though, has comes through in the end. Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. So at the heart, he's on the good side. But they managed to get these kind of buoys that are going to use the same transponder codes as the shuttles, and they're going to use them as decoys as they try to escape Lothal. And so the Star Destroyer picks up all these multiple transponders and are appropriately confused by them, and they split their fighters, and the shuttle is able to enter into orbit and jump to hyperspace before the Star Destroyer can catch them. Again, all of this was as Darth Vader predicted. Like, nothing in this was, as you watch the episode, you're like, yes, they got away. And then it's like, just 30 seconds later, it's like, Chopper comes out and they were being tracked. Oh, but before that, this is where the entire Ghost crew has kind of, I called it their family meeting, because they all kind of get together and talk about, what they're going to do. And because Kanan still isn't fully convinced that they're part of the larger rebellion yet. And Hera, being the mom of the crew, gets everybody's input. Kanan, of course, doesn't really want to join the larger rebellion. Sabine wouldn't mind going solo with the Ghost crew. Zeb wants to join the fleet, and Hera too wants to join the fleet. And they let Ezra kind of be that deciding vote, which was really cool for him and his character. And Ezra thinks that the rebels can help them get stronger so they can go back to Lothal and change things. So he wants to join the rebel fleet. So that is kind of the moment where they decide as a group to go back to the rebels. Vader is informed that the rebels escaped Lothal, And but the admiral is informed that there's a tracking device. Admiral Sato, the admiral in who was informing Vader is informed that there was a tracking device on the shuttle, which I thought was interesting because earlier on when they board the shuttle, Hera tells Zeb to go make sure they won't be tracked, and it must have been something quite sophisticated and hidden away because Zeb missed it.
Yeah, whenever they said it, they said that there was one hidden on there. So what I thought was that there was the main one that they would suspect to be tracked, and then another secret one, proving that Vader was also one step ahead as always.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, that they would go disable the main transponder of the ship, but then there's this other one that they had deliberately hidden.
Mm-hmm. So the shuttle does get back to the fleet, and Chopper comes out and tells them that they're transmitting this transponder code back to Lothal, and they know that they're being tracked. And so they all start to scramble, and Darth Vader comes and arrives solo in his TIE fighter.
One lone TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Against a fleet. Like,
yeah.
I know why they're all like, oh, what is this guy doing? This is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we need to get rid of that TIE fighter.
There was an online commentator who was saying it played out like a horror movie. Like the lone villain shows up, and you know, and like starts to methodically just take him out because Phoenix Squadron is sent to intercept, and they are quickly. A lot of them are taken out.
I like if you watch the maneuvers that he takes here. They're very similar to the maneuvers that he makes in the Clone Wars, where he ducks and he rolls a lot and weaves in and out of the things that are moving. And so you see a lot of reflection of the style of fighting, which is very different than the way everybody else seems to be flying their dogfighters. And it's obvious it's because it's Vader and he can, he can do that kind of thing. But it was nice to see that they really kept true to that methodical maneuvering that he goes through to make sure that he's dodging all the blaster bolts, but then also gets himself into position to do something to fire back.
Yeah. He's Anakin Skywalker through and through, the pilot and everything. At this point, Hera decides that she's going to go get involved, and Kanan says, not without me, you're not, and runs after her, and Sabine heads out, and now we kind of get another shift to Ahsoka, who asks Ezra if she can tag along. Another awesome quote from Hera once they all get into position and everybody's in the gun turrets. She's like, all right, kids, do mom and dad proud. And they go out and start to dogfight with Vader. Phoenix home, the command ship loses its hyperdrive and can't withstand another attack, and so they're scrambling on what to do. And we have now the kind of the clincher part of the entire episode where Ahsoka recognizes that the Force is strong with this pilot, and she and Kanan reach out with the Force to feel his presence. And Ezra feels the cold again, and they start to say that they can feel the fear, the anger, the hate. They make contact with Vader, and Vader recognizes Ahsoka immediately, of course, and says, the apprentice lives. And Ahsoka, after that encounter, loses consciousness. Do you think that she knew that it was Anakin in that moment?
I think so, yeah. If Vader was able to recognize her, I'm sure that she was able to recognize him.
I don't think that she would. I don't think there would be any confusion about who it was for her at that point. I think the confusion for her is then understanding where she fits into everything, and how. And I think that's the reason. The reason that she, has that moment where she detaches and faints isn't about like her having some kind of grand revelation about who this is, but more about wondering, wait a minute, am I on the wrong side? Because as far as she's concerned, at the end of Clone Wars, she still has this, and Anakin is still a good guy. And because the Emperor and Vader have done such a good job of distancing themselves from the connection between Vader and Anakin, it's likely that she wouldn't even know that connection existed yet. And so she's just starting to make that. And now I can see her wondering, okay, wait, he joined them. maybe there's something to this whole thing. Maybe, yeah, you know, and because there was that seed of doubt that was sown by Maul at the end of the Clone Wars, and you start to see all that come to roost right here in this moment. It's like it was not big when it happened in 2015, and it's so much bigger now.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
She doesn't identify him to the Ghost Crew later though, so right. You know that's you know, you could sort of imply that she is refusing to believe what she felt if she didn't want to believe that Anakin has gone quite so far to become Darth Vader. So that's definitely something that Ahsoka continues to wrestle with, and we see that play out in Rebels, and we'll definitely get to it. After that connection, Commander Sato recognizes that they have to abandon Phoenix Home because Imperial reinforcements have finally decided to show up, or Vader finally let them show up. He orders them to block the escape of the rebels. He definitely wants them alive. And this is where we see some very impressive Hera flying and outmaneuvering Vader, which was really cool. She expertly kind of maneuvers herself between the two Star Destroyers as the other rebel ships jump to hyperspace, and it almost makes me wonder if she's force sensitive, because she was able to hit the hyperspace button, or the lever, just in the nick of time before they engaged the tractor beams and managed to catch Darth Vader instead of the Ghost.
See, now we get into the discussions about what exactly it means to be force sensitive.
Well,
because you have the moments where Han is like doing stuff that should not be possible according to just like standard, like he turns at, there are a couple moments in Force Awakens where he like just shoots off to the side and hits somebody and he's not even looking, and then he turns around and looks and goes, oh, hey, that was really nice. that was really effective. But it's almost like these main characters, they can't avoid the Force guiding them, even if they want to call it luck, even if they want to call it skill. There's something extra that's kind of sprinkled on them in these moments.
Same would be very much true of Finn, who is sort of revealed outside of the movie that he is force sensitive. And connecting that to the Catholic view of things. I mean, that would be the same sort of thing to say that God is touching everybody's lives, whether or not someone is aware of it, whether someone is going to acknowledge it, or even if someone is refusing to believe it. God is very much active in everybody's life, and some people would call it the universe, or luck, or karma, or whatever you want to call it. But it's God himself who's always present to each and every single one of us. Granted, it's not like the Force. There's not levels of like God is more present to some people and not as present to others. He's present to all of us equally. So
I don't know. I mean, you can make an argument that saints, in their own way, it's not that Jedi are more powerful or more available to it, just that they're aware of it.
Yeah.
And that they are actively working with it.
Or
with the Force.
There's also the analogy of, I guess, if you visualized every single person as an empty cup, and God is like water being poured into the cup, like God, everybody's cup would be completely filled, but we all have different sized cups, so we all have a different capacity, but that doesn't diminish the fullness that we've received. So I think perhaps the saints have quite a bit deeper cups than those of us who are still striving to be the saints that we're called to be. The episode kind of then comes to a conclusion. We have the Ahsoka informing Kanan, or Ezra and Kanan telling Ahsoka about their encounter with Vader. Kanan does have another good one-liner here, but it's not so much funny as it is just insightful. They're talking about the fighting, and he says, "We must find the strength to fight, but the greater courage is knowing when not to fight," which is also super important. The episode ends then with Vader informing the Emperor of Ahsoka's survival, and Palpatine wants to use Ahsoka to lead them to other lost Jedi, potentially such as Kenobi, who does show up in Rebels. And we end the episode with the Emperor ordering Vader to dispatch another Inquisitor to hunt them down, which will very much play into how season 2 plays out. So that's it for the Siege of Lothal. What other random points or things that I missed that you guys wanted to bring up about these episodes?
I wanted to mention character development, especially between Kanan and Ezra, from even season 1 to season 2. You can see how Ezra's matured a lot more from season 1, from being a naive kid to trying to take action, being more of a leader. And Kanan's starting to like worry about where he's going and what he can do. But he's always sort of been like that as the father. You can definitely see it starting to reflect a little bit more.
That's one of the really cool things about these series, is that you get seasons to see that progression and growth. Season 1 seemed to be about Ezra finding his place within this family. And then, season 2 and going forward is then how that is affecting the larger rebel cells and Kanan's character growth, from wanting to be solo and just kind of do good, but not really get involved to where he ends up at the end of Rebels is also a really inspiring story arc to follow.
Yeah, I think also I coming back to where we kind of started going down this path where we were searching for Mandalorians and looking at Sabine's armor. Yeah, it just reminds me we're starting to get a lot of really thick lore about the Mandalorians, where there was just sort of hints and you could piece things together before, because Boba Fett's armor was very different from the Mandalorian's armor the way we saw it as it was presented. Jango Fett's armor was very different. All of the Mandalorian armor throughout the Clone Wars was very different. And now you've got Sabine, who's got this completely unique, very personally stylized set of armor. But it's interesting to see that tied into where the Mandalorian was, where they had to earn their totem, their animal spirit, or from in the battles that they encountered, or they had to, all of the weapons have names that are bestowed to them with some kind of religious component to it. And placing these characters back into that framework where all of that stuff's happening off screen for them is really interesting to kind of think of Sabine as being a religious character amidst all of these other things that are happening. And that Mandalorian sort of ritualism is part of who she is. And we discover, more as we discover more about her character, that we see that she is a Mandalorian, very fully a Mandalorian, and none of that is lost on her.
I also love that of just how human she is, because we have the Mandalorian who he never takes off his helmet, and then we have Sabine, who, I mean, obviously she's from a different sect of Mandalorians or different beliefs, but she has her helmet off all the time. But even just her hairstyle and her art is really just a way for her to it humanizes her, which is also super cool. So I think unless you guys have anything else to add?
The music was one thing that I thought was really interesting, because coming from Clone Wars, where the music was its own thing, the music was very unique to Clone Wars. And then we talked a lot about the music in the last few episodes of the Clone Wars, because it was obviously very different stylistically. We're very clearly back into Star Wars music in Rebels. And that was an interesting feeling when you were like, oh, wait, that's a Star Wars. That's a Star Wars piece. That's actual Star Wars music right there.
Always love the music. So, listeners, that's it from us for these 2 episodes. And of course, what did you guys think of the Siege of Lothal? Definitely be sure to let us know. You can email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page and let us know. And our email is starwars@sqpn.com. And you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. And of course, we always need to take a moment and thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including this week Scott S., Tom S., Miguel G., Donna P., and Alvin W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue creating the secrets of Star Wars and all the various shows that we do here at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to subscribe to the show if you haven't already in your favorite podcast player, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can also listen on the Amazon Alexa, so that's also pretty cool. And also on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just be sure to click the bell to get notifications for our newest episodes. And you can also find any of our previous episodes at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And so we will be back in a couple weeks where we will continue to follow Ahsoka and Rex and Maul in Rebels. And we will be looking at Season 2, Episodes 3 and 4. This is when Rex comes into the play. So be sure to catch up on Disney Plus and join us in a couple weeks. And so until then, Thomas and Herho, thanks for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
It was nice to be able to make it happen.
And Josh Beeghley, thanks for being our special guest this evening and talking about Rebels with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You were a joy to have on the show. And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.